uncensored hand-holding in my Precure show? Crazy. Hello, welcome back to You and Idol Precure episode 37. And let's just get it. Let's just get it over with, man. Let's get it over with. Of course, at the top of the episode, we are blazing past what happened last episode. I think I was mentally prepared because I knew ahead of time that the concert was like an IRL thing, that they didn't showcase the concert, but I did realize, full stop, that the rest of the fandom was not aware of this. And so when you come to this episode and they're like, the concert's over, people were like, I thought that they were gonna perform. They didn't. They sure didn't. That is definitely like, you should have gone IRL if you wanted to see them. It was hilarious. That's a little hilarious to me. But at least they kept the continuity of the concert to this episode, which is nice, but Precure's never been bad about kind of keeping the ball rolling with the story. Well, I take it back. This season's actually been horrible about that. But they've been more so like, Kaito's in existence. Kaito's no longer in existence. Kaito's no longer in existence. It's very back. Nonetheless, Tanaka's like, hey guys, the Pretty Store is so popular that you guys have to help, which is really cute. I thought that was kind of funny. But in the meantime, this is another Kaito episode, so we see Kaito, and everybody's like, Uta, you have feelings for him. You should go see him. And she's like, what? Me? No, I couldn't possibly. You know, all the things I love to see that I've been so excited about. More interestingly, we finally get an episode where we're addressing this. Like, it's been in the air for a bit, but I think this is the one thing that was not a red herring. Yeah, Jogi's the person. He's been like, there was somebody I knew in my past who was my best friend. And here we see Jogi, like, tormenting him. And then he's like, oh, my bro, Kazuma, name drop. And then he's all sad, TM. And Jogi's like, haha, sucks to be you, boo-hoo. Evil taunt in the distance. Meanwhile, Uta sees Kaito sad and is like, I don't want to get into that. She's like, I don't know if I want to get into all that. And decides to go to the store instead. And then the more important thing that happens this episode, we learn that Tanaka, the store manager, has fans who like Tanaka the best. Shout out to these two boys. They know what's up. They know what truly matters in this series, and that's really all that matters to me. I also was like, why is the store overrun? You have two other guys working there, and they made sure to make sure these two were included. They showed what they're like on the floor and how their like knowledge of being a fan aided them in running the store, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I actually had something similar happen to me when I went to the Pretty Store, where I bought a bunch of stuff for Magical Cinnamon when I was at the Pretty Store in Tokyo. I bought like a bajillion Soleil stuff, and then I bought one acrylic of Pure Sunshine for me because it was like the only Sunshine merch in the store. And the person working behind the desk was like, you do realize this isn't she was like, you do realize this isn't Pure Soleil? And I was like, I'm aware. But I love that, like, as a fan, she was like, I want to make sure you're not making the wrong purchase. You do understand that this is not the character that you just bought 50 items for. You bought a singular item of another yellow cure. It was very funny. But, like, on the note of these two working, he's kind of, like, low-key the worst, because he just is, like, shoehorning the rest of the merch away and only putting Miss Wink everywhere. Like, not gonna lie, you're not doing your job as well as your counterpart. And then we have a couple of, like, cutesy moments of the girls around the store, and we see, of course, Melodon freaking out at Puri doing merchandise. All of it culminating to the heart of this episode, where everybody's like, Uta, what are you doing back here? Why didn't you go see the guy you have a crush on? And she's like, well, he was in a mood. And they're like, too bad, you gotta go see him. And she's like, you're so right. So she goes off to go find Kaito, who's, like, emotionally singing at the beach, and I'll give him this. They did hire a good voice actor. That man can sing. His song is pretty good. I'll give him that. They were not lying when they said we hired an idol to be Kaito. He's got a nice voice. But like Uta chases after him and is like, hey, you look bummed out. What's that about? Why are you sad? To which she's like, now it's time to go into my sad TM backstory. I should have told you back at the other episode, but I'm telling it to you now. It all started on this beach, and we go into a flashback. Kaito reveals that he's actually, like, a shy boy. He liked to sing, but he never sung in front of anybody else. Not that this really looks like a shy boy. You look at this boy, and this looks like a confident dude. So, I mean, he might be lying a little bit. But he was like, I was shy, and always just perform with myself. Until I met Kazuma, who was like, hey, we should be idols together. besties forever. And it was the start of the perfect BL, I'm not gonna lie, this is a good premise. And not only should these two be bestie boyfriends, we should enter the idol auditions together and be a duo, and like it would be amazing. And Kaito's like, whoa, this dude's coming on a little strong, but I think I'm into it. And Kazuma wins him over, and they start training a little bit harder and more legitimately to be idols. And it's interesting, too, the way they decide to show these kind of flashes of them practicing, because you see that Kaito really just isn't as good or as, like, seasoned as Kazuma seems to be. Kazuma seems to be far more, like, into it, and Kaito does come off a bit more novice, which is interesting. But the two of them bond over their times together, and we see their signature colors of, like, the kind of tealish blue, and then Kazuma seems to be this brown. I don't know how important that is, but if they become cures by the end of the season, I'd love to see these two in these two colors. Just putting it out there. We'll finally have a brown cure? Could that save the show for me? Could they have a brown male cure? Could that change everything? Find out in like 10 episodes. But yeah, the two of them have practiced and they're about to go to the audition. And then we have this like, there's no heterosexual explanation for this handhold right here. Where the two of them are laying on the beach like, yeah. And then Kazuma grabs Kaito's hand. And they're like, yeah. And I was like, whoa. They be showing this relationship in ways I didn't expect. We're uncensored hand-holding? And my Precure show? Crazy. Am I coping? A little bit. But I'm not gonna lie, the two of them have an adorable little backstory. But it goes just about where you think it would go. And tragedy was just on the horizon. And it sucks because, like, you know, the two of them seem fairly happy. But we learn that not all was good in paradise. Not everything went well for these two. Kaito ended up succeeding in the audition while Kazuma did not, which is led to the end of that friendship. And to be honest, it's anime that always does this to me, that I just don't understand the ideology here, where Kaito's like, he didn't want to be my friend anymore after I won the audition. And I'm like, yeah, no shit. Like, I'm sorry. Why do they always do this, where they're like, I don't understand why he wasn't getting along with me after that. Like, why? Why do you not understand? What is not being understood? He wanted to make it. It was his suggestion and he didn't get in. I'd be a little pissed too. And then Kaito does that thing where he's like, so now when I perform, I'm always singing for him. And I'm like, if I was Kazuma and I was like, this dude's just singing for me as a successful idol, the thing I wanted to be, it pissed me off more. I never understand these ideologies. I never understand why this is like the sound plan. Like I would be pissed too. I'm mad. I'm moving over to Team Jogi. I'm the villain now. But Jogi shows up and is like, Kaito, stinky man, who betrayed me and like doesn't seem to remotely understand why I'm upset. Like, I'm on Jogi's side here. Like, I would be mad too. And I think it sucks that Kaito doesn't really understand that. But Jogi's like, you seem like a good victim of the week. Let's do that. And then Kaito drops that this is Kazuma, with Uta witnessing that. And then Kaito's the victim of the week. Uta, blown away by what just occurred and all the revelations she had, has a hard time transforming. But don't worry, the gang shows up the second Kaito's kind of gone. The second Kaito's gone, we can see the rest of the gang. Because we can't have everybody in the same room, or else the world will explode. We get a little bit of a fun fight at the top of it. We finally, you know, it would be an episode like this where they put a little bit more energy into it. We get a nice kick from these two. And then we start to get into what actually frustrates me about the way they handle this kind of plotline and why it bothers me. Because it's not just, like, the reasons I hate this plotline. But this is something that Precure does a lot. Where Kazuma and Idol are having an argument about, like, she's like, You're Kazuma? Why are you doing this? Kaito's your bestie. And I'm like, okay, how did you hear that story and not understand why Jogi's pissed off? Like, how are you missing that? First of all, like, I don't stand with you at all, Idol. You're wrong. It makes so much sense why he's pissed. But the real problem that happens in this situation is she goes on to, like, address him, and the two of them are having this conversation with one another. But the rest of the group is like, who's Kazuma? What are you talking about? This is what I hate about these kind of plot lines that Precure does every so often, where only one character is privy to the backstory, and the rest of the cast is like, we don't know what's going on. Like, the only information the rest of the group gets is that he's a best friend to Kaito, and that's about it. They don't know anything about the Sad Team backstory. And, like, I assure you, maybe if one of these other members heard Jogi's backstory, they would have been like, no, I get why he's behaving the way he did. No, I get it. Like, at least Kokoto. I think Kokoto would hear that backstory and she's like, no, I get it. I get why he's mad. Like, I can see that Uta is, like, the typical Genki protagonist who doesn't really understand and was gonna take Kaito's side, but also she's biased because she's in love with Kaito. But, like, the rest of the group would be like, no, I think we understand. But of course, they don't know the backstory. Of course they don't know the backstory, because they do this every couple seasons where only a select few characters genuinely know the rest of the story, and it's so frustrating. It's one of the, like, weaker points of, like, Delicious Party, where everything to do with the villain kind of is so removed from the rest of the main cast that it's, like, it's just too divided. And then they also did this with a couple of important character stories in Tropical Rouge, where the only person who knew everybody's backstory was Laura, but everybody else doesn't know each other's backstories. And it just drives me mad. Where I'm like, this is the big problem with not having the rest of the group included in this whole Kaito thing that now seems to be a pretty prominent story for the show. The only thing that makes this, like, a less prominent conflict, debatably, is that we learn, like, the one big revelation we have here that couldn't have been found out beforehand is that Jogi is not part of Team Chokuri. He's just kind of, like, doing his own thing while also being evil. And so there's a chance that this whole Kaito-Jogi thing will probably get resolved before we go into whatever's going to be the final battle. They may drag it all the way out to the conclusion of the show. That's always a potential. I hope they don't, because that's going to mean things I don't like. I hope they wrap this up before we get into, like, the deep 40s, but I know a lot of the upcoming episodes are going to be, once again, sidelining Kaito, which they did explain at the top of the episode that Kaito is going to be gone for a while, and this is going to be one of the last episodes we see him because he's going off to do something. So they try to make an excuse of why Kaito is not going to be present for a hot minute, but I really hope that they do this Jogi Kaito plotline separate from whatever's going on with Darkine and Pikorine. Like, it feels like there's not too much going on with those two plotlines, but we are literally running out of episodes. We don't have much time left in this show. We've got around, like, a little less, like, 12, 11 episodes left, and we need to deal with Chokiine, we need to deal with Darkine, we need to deal with Jogi, and we just don't have a lot of time unless all of those plot lines get shoved together. So again, the show's starting to line up to do what all the other seasons have been doing, which is the plot at the last second. Nonetheless, the battle escalates. The girls try to, like, shield up and be like, friendship is important, you should not hate Kaito, you guys have a big bond. And this actually doesn't work for the moment. The shield of friendship doesn't succeed, which I think it shouldn't. This should not work anyways, because the rest of the team is not united. It's just Idol. And it's turning into the Just Idol show. And the girls are backed against a wall, things are looking really grim, and we just have Idol constantly saying, you guys can be friends, your bond's not destroyed, friendship matters, the typical rigmarole that we get in these shows. And then Jogi snaps. Like, the whole time he's been kind of taunting her and being like, whatever about everything that's going on so far. But this, like, finally he's like, what do you know? He gets upset. The veil of pretending is over. He's like, no, I am upset about this incident. Like, he tries to play it off as like, I've moved on and Kaito's still hanging up on this. But it's like, no, you're still hung up on this too, buddy. Which leads Uta to, like, burst out and be like, you know what? You know why this matters and you know why I'm correct? Because I'm in love with Kaito. Oh, it's so awful. I'm like, great. I was like, oh, wow. But I do want to put it out there. I have been gaslit so hard. Luckily, not too much in my own comment section, but in other places across the internet, where people are like, you're so gross for thinking that there's anything that they're trying to write romantically between Kaito and Uta. And I'm like, are you watching the show with a blindfold on? Like, she has multiple times basically confirmed that she has feelings for Kaito, and here she's like, yeah, I've got feelings for Kaito. But at least she acknowledges, which the one thing that Precure is likely to do for us if I hold out hope enough, where she's like, I don't know how Kaito feels about me, and I was like, I sure hope he doesn't feel any way about you. Let me put it that way. But the fact that it's up in the air, and we're this deep into the show, still not something I'm fond of. And then we have a little bit of a nice fight. We get a little bit of good Sakuga. Not in any particular place where I would want good Sakuga, but I can't, you know, be upset that the show decided to finally have some good animation in it. And of course, it's for Uta's solo power-up. I am bitter about this. I don't know if I've said it in this review. I know I've definitely said it on some of the streams. I hate solo power-ups. They're like, I think I hated them more when I was younger, but I still am never a fan of solo power-ups. There's no excuse for her to get any kind of a power-up. The only thing I'll give it is that it's not a great power-up, it's just a palette swap, and all she does is perform her same song that she's been doing the whole show, but with her palette swap. But I'm still not a fan. I feel like this is just once again ostracizing the rest of the cast from being relevant. Like, they all did nothing but encourage the romance between Kaito and Uta this episode, which puts them at the bottom of the tier list for me. And for the most part, the performance is the same. I mean, budget-wise, this was a pretty easy, cheap way to add another product to the lineup, which again, I've talked about it before, that I'm not super fond of the merch for the second half of the show. I feel like they definitely got a lot lazier, where they're like, we can make bank for doing virtually nothing. Because here they're like, we made a ribbon, which they already have the ribbon design down. They just have to print it in red. They just made Uta red. In terms of the show, they didn't have to really re-render anything 3D-wise. They didn't have to redo her model. They didn't have to redo the dance or anything. They genuinely just had to change the materials on her outfit to red. All they did was add a multiply and then add a pink layer. That's all they did, technically speaking. That is all they did. And she basically just does her signature, same old attack, but now in red. That being said, do I hate this color palette? No, I think the red looks really good. I kind of wish this was always her look. I'm not going to lie, I kind of like it better than her standard look. I feel like the pink is better than the loud yellow that her hair was before. I feel like it works, but I also feel like part of the reason why we went with the obsessive amount of red is to, like, you know, maybe accentuate the romance that's supposed to be happening here. Like, this is the culmination of her love for Kaito. So for her to genuinely turn red, like, it feels like it's pretty on the nose. This is literally the love power-up. And, you know, we beat Jogi for the moment. He goes off. Woo. The typical rigmarole. Kaito does look so pretty, though, dead on the beach. I'm not gonna lie to you. They draw him pretty. But get up, dude. And so we have a big culmination moment, which could have been a confession, but I knew it wasn't going to be a confession because she's Idol and not Uta. If she was going to confess to Kaito her feelings that she had just figured out all of, like, 5 seconds ago, she would have been Uta. But it doesn't help that we have the team, like, tee-hee giggle behind the rocks being like, ooh, what's she gonna do? And then, like, when something's about to happen, they're like, we gotta leave because heaven forbid we be in a scene with Kaito for too long. Then Uta's closest thing to a confession that she goes with here is just screaming out that their bonds are not dead, which is ironic because she literally just fought Jogi and saw that the bonds were not bonding very well. And she just kind of antagonized Jogi. Like, nothing about what she did was, like, convincing the dude. She need to, like, sit down and have a cup of tea with him and have a conversation if we're trying to convince him anything. Like, yelling at him that, like, bonds are real and that you're in love with Kaito, again, both Kaito and Uta suck in terms of, like, dealing with the conflict with poor Jogi/Kazuma. Both of them are missing the mark on how to deal with this dude. It's impressive, but it's such a magical girl thing to do, though. Like, both of their methodology for trying to solve this problem is bad. I'm gonna sing until he, like, realizes I care about him. And then Uta's like, I'm gonna say that I love Kaito, and that's gonna convince him that Kaito still wants to be his friend. Stupid. Both of them are dumb. And then Kaito notices the similarities between Idol and Uta, and pretty much is about to, before it's cut off, say that he realized they're the same person. Which, given that the next episode is the Halloween episode, there's a smidgen of a chance that at the top of the next episode, they'll address whatever happened here, where they'll finish whatever conversation Idol and Kaito were having. Worst case scenario, it will sit there and he'll be like, you're somebody I recognize, or he says, you're Uta, and then she's like, no, I'm not, and then runs away, and then Kaito, like, goes to do whatever he's supposed to do that's gonna have him absent for a couple of episodes. That's, like, probably what's gonna happen. Best case scenario, he realizes she's Uta, and then they have some kind of conversation about her being the same person, and then, like, part ways, and then we go into the Halloween episode. Who knows how they'll handle it. But I can tell you once again, the whiplash between these episodes is horrendous. I genuinely, like, as much as I hate a lot of what's going on with the Kaito plotline, I'd rather they just get it over with. Like, rip the band-aid off. Go to the next episode and deal with the Kazuma, Uta, Kaito mess that is currently happening in the series. Because taking a break to do a Halloween episode feels nonsensical. Though, to be fair, the Halloween episode we had last season with Wonderful Precure ended up being incredibly plot-heavy and a very impactful episode, so it may just be an episode where Halloween's there for like 2 seconds at the beginning of it, and maybe they revisit some kind of plot line, but I also suspect that Kaito is not going to be very present in the next episode. But overall, I guess my thoughts and feelings were, there's stuff I don't like about this episode that I've talked about. I mean, I beat the dead horse here with how much I don't enjoy the Kaito plotline, and I hate the romance obsessively. And I hate the romance a whole bunch. But kind of growing numb to it at this point. I hope the romance doesn't culminate by the end of the series, but again, I don't see people really obsessed with the romance very much. I see a lot more people interested in what the story is trying to say. I definitely care far more about Kaito and Kazuma and seeing into that than whatever the hell is going on with them otherwise. I honestly feel like this is one of those storylines where, like, we just gotta take Uta out. Or at least to handle it with the way Delicious Party did, where, like, at the end of the day, the main character didn't really have too much stake in the problem. They just beat the villain up until the villain and who the villain was fighting for just to kind of solve the problem. But we'll see. I feel like we're running out of time to talk about Darkine. I hope she shows up sooner than later and tells her side of the story, because obviously at some point she saw sad Jogi and gave him magic to cope with the pain. Who knows? Oh, I do hope on Jogi's sake that, like, a lot of the way he's behaving now is of his own volition. I really hope they don't pull what they've done in other seasons, where it's revealed that he was brainwashed the whole time. Because that's kind of what happened with our fairies, where they were like, oh yeah, we were part of, like, the dark team, but we were always manipulated by Darkine's powers, and none of it was of our own volition, and we can't even really remember why we were evil. I'm hoping that's not the case, because that would be an awful way to end this plotline. That would be awful if they were just like, we purified Jogi, and now he's Kazuma, and he's like, oh, Kaito, my bestie. It would be weird. I really hope they don't resolve it that way. And I don't know, I really hope that this does not get rushed, because there's too many strands right now that they really need to, especially, like, Choki-ine. What's up with her? How are we going to solve her plotline? It's just kind of dangling there. It needs to be addressed. I definitely feel like we should have had her character arc resolved. Otherwise, it seems like she's going to be far more important and far more relevant to the end of it. I don't know. Maybe they're ending her arc in the next 2 episodes. Who knows? Who knows what they're going to do? But yeah, this episode was something. I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye!